Welcome to my PowerPoint about Black Souls 2 Covenant. I'll be ranking them solely based on their stat bonuses, so no, build is not going to suddenly be S tier because it gives you access to Serpent God's Blood. The first and worst Covenant in the game is Bill. The original description in the game is a bit misleading. It says plus 50% MP, indicating that it's additive, but in reality it's multiplicative, so 150% MP is more accurate. This also applies to almost every Covenant in the game. Bill's Covenant also halves mana cost, so it basically triples your effective MP. My only question is just, why? Why do you need more mana? Mana is literally the least important stat in the entire game. You can just use Herb Flash M or Pigeon's Egg to completely restore it every single turn. So more mana is only ever useful if you need to use a lot of them in a single turn. While leveling up only increases mana by 1, Purple Souls increase it by 10 each, and Black Souls increase it by 5. You consume a couple of them and you basically have infinite mana. Even the highest mana draining skills in the game only cost 200 mana, and they have cooldowns anyway. Even when I use multiple Black Rabbit's Ring and Demon's Catalyst, I never ran into mana problems like ever. I personally never use this Covenant and will never do because there won't be a reason to. Next, at the bottom of D tier is Bricket's Covenant. In case you're wondering why I skip E tier, well, there's only so much Covenant in the game to rank to justify its existence. But I still need F tier for the thumbnail. Anyway, Bricket's Covenant gives you 500% targeting or aggro, which is very much obsolete at the point of the game where you can obtain it. First of all, you can only get party members on specific fights, and more than likely already beaten 90% of them before you get the Covenant. Secondly, you want less aggro, not more. Why you should tank the heals for your temporary party member? It's much better to use them as shield instead, so you can take less damage from the battle. The other bonus it provides is double soul and item drops. Those are pretty good for grinding. The only problem, however, is that there's not really much item drops to grind for. Most items you need can just be bought from shops, and farming souls is extremely easy. The only item you need to grind is probably Mysterious Shards in Zeros and Queensland to upgrade your special weapons. Outside of Chaos Dungeon, farming souls might get rough if you're playing in lower difficulty, but realistically, you will have more souls than you'll ever need most of the time. Next you have Dodo. Her Covenant gives 150% speed and higher chance to attack first. This Covenant is probably the best in the early to mid game, especially on lower difficulty. Speed is the most important stat in the game. If you have higher speed than your enemy, it acts as another source of bonus action. In contrary, if your speed is too low, be prepared to tank a lot of hits. The reason why I put this very low on the list is because speed will lose its meaning after you reach the speed cap. I don't know the actual number, I haven't looked into it. But after you and the enemy reach a certain speed, speed cap no longer exists and the stat itself becomes obsolete. That happens because the AP bar fills up instantly in a single frame, so it just becomes a completely normal and traditional turn-based RPG. The preemptive strike also doesn't work when you reach the speed cap because you always, 100% of the time, attack first before the enemy unless the game said otherwise. No, it doesn't work against Lord's Final Battle, he's scripted to attack on turn 0. Next one is Victoria. 10% HP and MP regen, completely useless. I already talked about how irrelevant mana was, and HP regen is also one of the most useless stats in the entire game. Why bother when you can just heal with items every turn? Sure, you can argue that you need HP regen in DLC 3, particularly in SS3 Ignited and against Nurse Call and Florence, but 10%? Really? The more useful part of the Covenant is the double luck. No, it's not going to make you better at gambling, it's not going to help you win the lottery, and no, it certainly won't give you a higher chance at getting laid or find a wife that doesn't cheat. But what it will do is increase your chance on inflicting ailments and reduce the chance of receiving one. Luck scales extremely well in this game. One luck difference is equal to 0.1% difference in procs. This is also multiplied further by the best chance of the procs. That number may sound really minuscule at first, but once you get into the late game, double luck can increase your luck by more than 10,000. At that point, you will have a guaranteed chance to inflict ailments. The only problem is that you don't really need to inflict ailment that often. And even when you do, you don't need the double luck from Victorious Covenant. I'd rather use a better Covenant and simply weapon swap to Mock Turtle's Ladle whenever I need to inflict ailments. And for the lesser chance of receiving ailments, well, in case you didn't know, using the dodge skill will prevent you from catching most ailments. This Covenant may have some very niche use, but it's not useful in most scenarios. The first C tier on the list is Dribbles. Gives you a 100% chance to escape from battles. Sounds useless at first, but in practice, it's very useful and convenient to have. As I already discussed earlier, after a certain amount of speed, you are guaranteed to attack first, so you can straight up just completely avoid every encounter ever. This is especially useful in DLC 3 areas, like against the corpses in Crimean, that can see you even when you're invisible, and the random winter warrior blocking your path in White Castle Town. While completely useless in actual battle, not having to run all the way back after dying while failing to run is a blessing I don't give enough credit for. Then we have Walrus, 30% HP regen. While Victoria's 10% HP regen is horrendously terrible and useless, Walrus's 30% is pretty good on the niche it's used for. And by niche, I meant like literally one fight, Florence second phase. SP regen is not exactly limited. Mad Bird's Shriek is 50%, but you have to cleanse the Madness element. Holy Banner is 30%, Mystery of the Night Sky is 30%, and Divine Punishment is 50%. But the problem with most of them is that they're buffs. Heavenly Beast Florence has an attack that kills you then instantly resurrects you at 1 HP, which removes all your buffs. So your HP regen is fucked unless you have most of them from equipment, or just use Warrior's Covenant. Technically, you can use Withered Ring to survive the resurrection attack, but that's not something that most people know about. Next up, we enter into the Good Covenant territory, starting from Jab Jab at the bottom of B tier. 30% Evasion, Magic Evasion, and Magic Reflect is a solid defensive option. It helps you reach 100% evasion much easier without having to spam dodge every turn. It's way better against magic attacks because of both Magic Evasion and Magic Reflect. Instead of 30%, you have a 51% of not taking damage from magic attacks. But do keep in mind that you will encounter a lot of certain hit attacks, one that ignore evasion, a lot in your journey. Simply having 100% evasion isn't going to give you a win against some bosses. Also, if you want to keep Jab Jab Covenant available, you need to sacrifice half of your covenants, including the best covenant in the game. Next is Kuti, the most expensive covenant in the game, tied with Sho actually. It gives 50% bonus action and +1 basic attack count. The 50% bonus action is very useful, but the inconsistency can make it obsolete too, especially if you already planned out your turn and try to weapon swap. Trying to end your turn with a certain weapon, but then given a random extra action you didn't account for, makes that action useless. If you try to swap weapon and use its skill, you'll be losing the benefit of weapon swapping. But on the other hand, if you don't swap to a different weapon, there's not really much to do with the bonus action. It's very likely that you already used all the skills you want to use before weapon swapping. Like you probably already used guard before proccing the 50% bonus action. The +1 basic attack count may sound useless at first glance. It only affects your basic attack, which you probably won't use most of the time, because using skills is simply better. There are exceptions to this however, being Hans Machine Gun and God's Angels. The problem is that they already have high attack count. +1 is only 11% increase in damage for God's Angel and 8% for Hans Machine Gun. But what makes this covenant potentially better than Bandersnatch is the existence of stats cap. Your attack is capped at 110k. No matter how much attack boost you get, you won't go past that. Attack count however doesn't have a limit. So if your attack is already capped without Bandersnatch's covenant, it's better to use Kuti instead. It also doubles your Jabberwock side basic attacks damage. Could be useful against Florence. Then there's Jabberwock, plus 30% crit and accuracy. Critical hits triple your damage, so 30% crit is 60% more damage for both physical and magic. By that logic, it should be better than Bandersnatch or Hata. But you need to keep in mind that crit stacks additively while attack and magic stacks multiplicatively. If you have 50% crit, then 30% crit is no longer 60% more damage. It's only 30% instead. And once you hit 100% crit, any more crit past that is completely redundant. Reaching 100% crit is also very easy to do. King's Order gives you 30% crit and Self-Mutilation gives you 50%. There's also Ring of the Abyss for 40%, and if you want to be reckless, Ring of Reckless Hero 60%. This Covenant gets more valuable the lower your crit is. It's also useless against enemies that are immune to crit. To be completely honest, Jabberwock shouldn't be this high on the list, but I love seeing red numbers and listening to the satisfying crit sounds, so that's why she ended up here. The 30% accuracy isn't even worth mentioning. It does nothing unless you somehow have lower than 100% accuracy. Next is Lorina, a very underrated Covenant. It halves all damage from fire, lightning, ice, dark, and light. Basically every basic elemental magic in the game. Survivability is key in this game. It doesn't matter how long it takes to win the fight, as long as you can survive every attack, you will win eventually. If you know what you're up against, taking half damage is a very solid option to have. The only problem is that you have to know the elements of the enemy's attacks, and it only works against half of them. Then there's Heta, 150% magic and a random madness resistance. There's really not much to say other than 150% multiplicative damage boost is obviously pretty good. If you stack buffs and magic increasing equipment like Demon's Catalyst, you can reach insane amount of magic and one-shot a lot of bosses with heavy soul discharge. The madness resistance on the other hand does nothing. You want to apply madness to yourself most of the time anyway, and even if you don't want it, you can just cure it with sedative or goddess blood. Next, we have Bandersnatch, 150% attack and plus 30% counter. While it seems equivalent to Heta, giving attack instead of magic, I put Bandersnatch above Heta for several reasons. First of all, attack is superior to magic in a lot of ways. The majority of skills from weapons, which are much more abundant than magic, uses attack. OP attacks like God's Angels, Deadman's Blow, and Freemius Wrath all uses attack. Most certain hit attacks also uses attack rather than magic. You will struggle to find a good single target or all target attacks with magic. Most of them are random targets, which is a bit annoying to use against certain bosses. There's a reason why Celestial Ring is so powerful and is often used in Soul Level 1 runs, even though it sets your magic to 1. Secondly, the 30% counter far outweighs the madness resistance from Heta. If you're up against an enemy that uses physical attacks, it's free additional damage, especially when they hit multiple times. Next, we have my personal favorite, Node. 150% max HP is extremely good. It translates to about 33% damage reduction from all sources. Remember, you can always heal to full every single turn with no downside in this game, and max HP scales extremely well. There's just so much sources of multiplicative max HP boosts. We have Ambition at 150%, Angel's Raiment another 150%, Ring of Vanity at 200%, Night Sprite another 200%. When you combine all of them together, you can have massive health pool and basically survive almost every attacks in the entire game. Reaching the max HP cap can only help you so much in DLC 3 however, which is why the next Covenant in the list blows this one out of the water. Before that though, the double recovery from item is kinda useless, but extremely convenient to use. When you have Madness active 99% of the time, you will be down to 1 HP every turn. That takes 2 herb flasks or 4 blood vials to fully recover. With Node's Covenant, you only need to press half the buttons. Technically useless, but feels very good to have. Finally, we reach the God tier of Covenants, and the first one on the S tier is Mock Turtle. 150% magic defense and guard up medium or 200% guard. Okay, this one might confuse a lot of people. I too once thought this Covenant was garbage and unusable, but hear me out. Let's start with the bad effect. The 150% magic defense is complete garbage, ignore that one. The enemy's magic scales far faster than your magic defense ever will. And even if you somehow outscale them, the damage formula was never made fair to begin with. You will often come across attacks that does 6, 8 or 10 plus times their magic, but you only block the damage with 2, 1 or even half your magic defense. I use Ring of Reckless Hero a lot in multiple playthroughs, yet the minus 99% defense and magic defense never have a noticeable impact on me. There are simply better ways to increase survivability than increasing your defense or magic defense. Now with that out of the way, the good effect lies on the 200% guard. What does guard do exactly? It divides the final damage, by 1 plus your current guard stat converted to decimal. Your base guard is 100%, so without any boost, guard halves the damage taken. If you double it with this Covenant, it goes to only 1/3 damage taken, which doesn't sound like a lot, but guard is multiplicative. The higher your guard, the more impactful increasing it becomes. If you have an extra large shield that triples it to 600%, that's only 14% damage taken when guarding. Then there's the broken buff called Soul Shield, 900% for some ungodly reason. That's going to take you to 5400% guard, which is less than 2%, around 1.81% damage taken while guarding, effectively increasing your effective HP by 50 times. 200% guard almost double your effective HP if your guard is already high. Without this Covenant, you go to 2700%, that's 3.57%. That being said, you will not be using an extra large shield in the late game. Two-Face Buckler is the best shield in the game because it gives 100% bonus action, but it's a small shield, only 150% guard. So with Soul Shield, you only go to 1350% guard, which is about 6.9%. With this Covenant, it goes to 3.57%, almost doubling your effective HP. And I have yet to talk about Ring of Enduring plus 3, which is another 300% guard, but you can do the math yourself. To summarize, in the late game, Mock Turtle's Covenant is far better than Node's because it provides more effective HP and doesn't have a cap, with the caveat that you must use guard almost every turn. That's not really a big problem if you have a bunch of bonus action though. To be fair, you will use guard almost every turn anyway since late game bosses do obscenely disgusting damage otherwise, and Shadow Melt gives you dodge on top of guarding. The next one, Shisha, is basically the same as Mock Turtle, but increases defense instead of magic defense. Just like how attack is better than magic, defense is better than magic defense because it's just more common. Not much else to say about this one. Then we have the second best Covenant in the game, Show. Minus 50% recovery and minus 50% damage from percentage-based damage. Those two are two sides of the same coin actually. They're the exact same thing. It's technically only one effect. Percentage-based damage is just recovery, but minus instead of plus. This late game only Covenant that you will most likely only use once, that is against Greginiol, or perhaps you need to use it for Indamea. Either way, despite that, it does work beautifully. It has one job and does it exactly how you wanted it to. Greginiol love to spam percentage-based damage. And I'm not talking about like 80% or 90% damage. Those aren't very scary. Greginiol has a lot of moves that straight up does 100% damage. Phase 1 and 2 has Joker, Phase 5 has Soul Break, Phase 6 has the gear attacks, and even the last two phases still does percentage-based damage. Basically, there's literally nothing you can do but certain hit 100% damage. It is impossible to survive it outside of Requiem, regardless of how powerful you are. The only other way to reduce percentage-based damage is without Ring at 20%. If you combine it together with Show's Covenant, you can survive two 100% damage attacks back to back. Having to use double the Herb Flask or Blood Vials can get very annoying though. That's why I avoid this covenant most of the time, even though those downsides are very inconsequential. I rank this one very high on the list because it's a very important stat to have, and there's really only one alternative to it. But even so, rings are more valuable and give more stats than covenant anyway, so it's better to use Zeus covenant over Whittled ring. The last covenant, and without a shadow of the doubt, the best covenant in the entire game, to no one's surprise, is Margaret. 100% bonus action and halves your speed. Bonus action is one of the most important stats in the entire game, and there's no harm to have more of them. There's so much to do with more action. You can cast your buffs faster, deal more damage, and the world is your oyster. You can even skip phases against Greginol because if you still have actions you haven't played out yet, but the phase is already dead, they will get carried to the next phase, and after they're done, you still act first before the boss does. You can get the Covenant relatively early, and it will carry you through the entire game. I recently beat the game at difficulty 9 without bonus action, and Jesus Christ, the game was borderline unplayable. I don't want to ever go back to that. I hope you can check out the video if you have the time. Anyway, the half speed is inconsequential after you reach the speed cap, so unless you're in the early game, you can ignore that. Just remember that there's a diminishing value on increasing bonus action. Going from 1 to 2 actions compared to 5 to 6 is very different. Just because Margaret's Covenant is the best one doesn't mean you shouldn't use the other Covenants, especially when your bonus action is high enough already. This is the full list if you want to take a look at it. While the list is subjective, I try to be as fair as possible in ranking them. And that's the end of the presentation. Thank you for watching, hopefully it was worth your time. Tell me what your favorite Covenant is down in the comment. Mine is most likely Node. It's the one I use the most and I might already have attachments to it. If you want to argue with the ranking, feel free to leave a comment. Make sure to also like and subscribe. I have a Chaos Dungeon video coming out soon. See you in the next one.